Mm.
It's a really interesting time, I mean, I think we have like all those old kind of heroes, and then there's like a new group, and they add in their 2 cents. For me, it's really great, and I try to take things uh, from anyone where I can. I'm not dogmatic. I'm like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't think like that. Man, I'll take something from anyone, that I think is really good, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
But it's also
Yeah.
kind of nice to see where you disagree with people, because I think one of the interesting things about learning a language is not only learning the language, it's becoming more developed in your thoughts about
Yeah.
language learning.
Yeah.
So I'll propose this question to you.
Mhm.
You and your personal language learning growth thoughts, where do you diverge from Matt's train of thought, or the whole, that whole realm of language learning? Because for me, I consider it a bit different. Like the comprehensible camp, the comprehensible
Mhm.
English camp, and like
Yep.
the mass immersion, or the,
Oh,
this
yeah.
style, right? So
Yeah.
what
Well, I
would you
mean,
say?
the obvious one is that as someone in their 30s with two kids and
Uh-huh.
trying to make something out of like getting an online business going and stuff, like the amount of time that Matt devoted to Japanese when he was a teenager and in his early 20s is completely impossible. Um,
Absolutely right.
so like, I mean, if I like, and also the other thing that needs to be said is that like, even if I did devote that amount of time to Swedish for like 2 years, there's every chance that I wouldn't end up as good as him because he was so young.
Yep.
The English hadn't made as big of an impression yet, and so there's all that. Um, so I guess, but like he's not denying that these days. He spends a lot of time on Refold, and
Mm.
so his Chinese has progressed slowly, and he's made no secret about that. Um, but yeah, I would just say that like that's not for everyone. However, what it did get me to do was to really consider how much time you do actually have, because I think that most of us are just really amazing at wasting time,
Oh
basically.
yeah. Hmm.
Like, and I'm constantly trying to push it these days to the point that like, um, oh, for a little while I was doing like a bit of Croatian on drops because like I was like, there's nothing else you can do with like this 8 minute gap
Yeah.
between like my shower and dinner or something like that. There's
Right.
like nothing, or like just literally, and it's like drops is not the only thing that can do that, but like just like little things,
Yep.
and you never know what stuff's going to turn into. And another one, your channel is getting all sorts of announcements from my personal life recently, but
Really? Oh wow.
another one is like I've been practicing the piano, and it's not like the piano is not new to me, but it's been many years since I've actually practiced the piano or even had a piano to practice on. Um, so I've been practicing that because that's something where like those 8 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day, that adds up, man.
Oh my
Like,
God.
like,
Absolutely.
um, um, yeah, especially if you've got a base in it already, like I do. And like now I'm all about deliberate practice, which is like often considered this really it's not as fun as just playing songs, but I'm like, I only have 15 minutes, so I'm just gonna I will now proudly spend 15 minutes, proudly and happily spend 15 minutes just working on a part of a piece that I can't play because it's too freaking hard.
Uh-huh.
And like if I just play this and I don't even play the rest of the piece, like the parts that I can play, I'll worry about those once I've gotten these bits that are too hard, because then I'll be able to put the whole thing together. So it's almost like taking the comprehensible input approach and like, or the deliberate practice kind of approach, and putting it into something entirely different. Because like I don't know that I'm all, like, where can you really go in life speaking Swedish unless you move to Sweden? Whereas like if you become someone who speaks really good Swedish and also plays the piano and also makes videos, like who knows what's the future can hold. So I forget how I even started talking about that. Where I would differ from Matt. Yeah, so you
Mhm.
can't. I would differ from his approach in that I'd say you just can't put that much time into one thing. And also, if you are going to put that much time into one thing, languages might not be the best thing for that, for an English speaker at least, and certainly not a language like Swedish where most of them speak English. That's just kind of cool to do that. It's not necessarily useful. And Matt admits that as well. He's like, I would trade my Japanese ability for other things if I could, but and another little, this is more a technical thing, and I think he's actually just abbreviating when he says this, but when he says that like people who speak early will always be like speaking a version of the language that where they're kind of translating. And I think he's abbreviating, but also he doesn't actually know because he never did that. And why would he? Because his approach, I would say, is superior. But that's not true. I did get both my Swedish and my French to the point that like they were in Swedish and in French as I spoke them. But he's right in that there's anything you come across that you can't say, you have to kind of go, well, in English, I would say this. So can you say this in French? But he talks about this idea of having alarm bells going off in your head if you're saying something that you're not sure can be said. And I would have that all the time. Like, as in, at least I knew that I was saying, so can you say this kind of thing? So I think it's a very inefficient approach, but I don't think you're always translating. And there are a lot of people who spoke early, yes, but then have been, as long as they've remained aware of where they differ from native speakers, they have actually reached a very high level. Right. So it can be done, but I think it's more about remaining aware through the whole process and going like, wait, what? I said that. No one says that. Like.
And you mentioned the example of your Venezuelan coworker, and I mean, I'm sure she keeps on making the same mistakes because, maybe her level of input is just like what she hears around her. It's really not enough. She needs a lot more. She's probably really connected with her family, Spanish all the time.
Oh yeah, she was like, if she was a Spanish learner, she would be like she would be an inspiration because she was dead set. In our work, there's a lot of like 15-minute blocks and then like 10-minute waits and 15-minute blocks and 10-minute waits. And she would be like on WhatsApp speaking Spanish to her friends. Like they would leave her a message and then she would record a message. It's like, it was literally, it was like, she was all Spanish all the time, except for work. Like, exactly. and I know, like if she's doing that at work, imagine what she's doing at home. Like she spent all her life in Spanish that wasn't for work. So
right. So no wonder it's like that. You know what I mean? And it makes me think like, I recently was on an interview and I said that, I'm an input guy, but I also don't have any kind of like, I don't think that I need to wait to any particular moment to speak. I think that's I don't like that idea, right? Yeah. I just let the speaking emerge, and I'm not worried about fossilization. I said that, like, I'm doing input work. So if I do have mistakes in explaining myself in any given moment, then I think that the input just going to take care of that through time. So I'm not worried about speaking, at whatever point. I let it come out as best as it can, and through time, things get kind of put in their place. Maybe you've had a similar experience being a person who spoke early, but then did a lot of inputs.
Yeah. I do think it can result in, speaking early can result in habits, but habits, I think the difference between fossilization and habits is that fossilization is when basically, knowingly or not, you've reached a point that you're not willing to change. And that can be anything. Like you will hear people say that about anything. Like, could you quit coffee? It's like, oh no, I could never quit coffee. It's like, well, you could, because there was a time in your life that you didn't drink coffee, and also lots of people around the world have never drunk coffee, or they've quit coffee, or they've quit cigarettes, something much more addictive than coffee. They've quit like illicit drugs that are super addictive, right? People have quit stuff. Like you can do it. So like it's just that speaking is such an automatic thing that we do. to the point that it is very hard to change stuff. But I've changed stuff about my English. I've become aware that I've said things wrong. Someone pointed out to me that saying the Ukraine is actually regarded as a bit of a slight on that country because it's something to do with, like, the president said we should no longer be called that because we're not a part of Russia, and I was like, I was never aware that everyone
Right.
in Australia says that. No one knows that it's a slight. We just think it's called that. And also,
Right.
I have Ukrainian heritage, so
Mm.
I'm not being racist, right?
Against your own heritage,
But
you know?
so, and then, like, so then every time I said the Ukraine, I was like, it's actually Ukraine. And so it is hard to adjust, but you can adjust. So I think that's the difference between fossilization, is when you're just going, no, I'm not. And even if you do that subconsciously, I'm not changing. But I do notice things in my Swedish that I still just say out of habit. And the longer I go between speaking and the more input I have, the more I say stuff that I surprise myself, like, wow, I didn't even know I could say that. And so, yeah, I think it's just a matter of, I'm the same. I don't think and that's going back to where I would disagree with Matt. I don't think there's a point that it's necessarily that you can't talk. And I think when he spoke to that Japanese singer on his channel, I think that guy actually spoke fairly early.
Mm.
So Matt says that guy is the best Western speaker of Japanese he's ever come across, including Dogen and including himself.
Mm.
So and I'm pretty sure that guy spoke, like, before he was that good at Japanese. But then I asked Matt a question about that, and he said, well, I think what makes that guy so good is just that he never stops analyzing the difference between himself as a native speaker. He never stops being curious, as like, wait, is that what I say? Like,
Mm.
so there comes a point where you might even be happy to accept that you say something a little bit weird, and that natives just go, oh, that's just his thing that he says.
Mhm.
And you might be, but most people never get anywhere near the point that they can even make that decision. They're always just saying stuff that's all of it's weird. um
Yes.
yeah.
I had an interesting moment a couple of weeks ago. I woke up for, I teach English. So I woke up for my class and there was no internet at home. I go, oh my gosh, and
The world is ending.
you
This
start to
is
feel
south.
a lot of pressure. Well, I had
Yeah.
like this like